Imagine you build the most beautiful application in your favorite programming language and the most sophisticated database, but how do you get them to talk to each other? How do you make sure your program is much more interactive with a beautiful UI and a sophisticated database? My name is Shabir, and this is exactly what we will see today. So before we get started, if you want to follow along with this tutorial, I recommend you to go over to visualstudio.microsoft.com/downloads so you can download the latest version of Visual Studio. The community version will do the job most of the time. You don't really need the professional or the enterprise version. And then head over to MySQL Workbench because that's the database we're going to use today. And just go ahead and download the community version again. Here I have it set up. It's completely free, both Visual Studio and MySQL Workbench. So what I have over here, the scenario is that we have a simple login page. All right, and what we'll do is I have a backend database where I have my usernames and their passwords stored over here. And when the user enters the correct username and password, he or she will be then taken to the main menu page over here. And if they enter the wrong password, then it's going to show them a message and it'll clear these boxes so they can retype it again. So let's go over and finish our database first. Now we're going to do this in two steps. So you will the first part will be connecting just the database, and the second step will be to make sure that the username and passwords are being fetched from the database. So somewhere down in the description below, whatever will be the name of this video, look at the second part of it to see the login part, and the first part we're just going to look at the connection of the database. So before we get going any further, now when you download MySQL Workbench, you can already set up as many tables as you want over here. I have 3 tables set up over here because in my scenario I have users and roles. So there's a many-to-many relationship. I have in users root John along with their passwords, and then in roles I have system administrator and system customizer. So because the user roles table is the bridging table, what I'm going to do, the relationship is going to be one to many over here. So what I'm going to need is a field to hold my username. And personally, whenever it's a bridging table, I like to give it the name of the same field that I'm matching on. So varchar okay, I don't really understand. Oh, that's varchar 45, sorry. And here we will have role name again at varchar 45. So now let's click on foreign key. We are again in the user roles table, and here we'll enter the name we're trying to match on. So username, we're referencing the users table from here to there, and we are going to match on the username. So as you can see, when I hover over this relationship, it tells me that the username here is matching with the username here. And it's important to click in foreign key options to click on cascade. What it's going to do is if the parent record changes, the child record will change as well. And for the second one, we're going to call it role name, and we're looking at the roles table. We're going to match the role name, and again we'll do the same thing, set cascade. So now when we hover over it, we see it over there. And finally, we're just going to enter the data for everything. So sometimes you have to close and reopen the table. It takes a little bit of time. So we'll enter root as system administrator, and John will enter it as system customizer. All right, good. We apply this, and now we're gonna go ahead and export the changes. So click on File, go to Export, go to Forward Engineering. I'm saving my script on my desktop. It's important to click on Generate Drop Schema and Generate Insert Schema. The script is I have a script called User Roles already, so I'll just replace it. When we click Forward, you can see the script is right here. I'm gonna copy it to clipboard to be sure as well. Now we're gonna go and run this on our database. I apologize if you're hearing people in the background. We have guests over. So, alright, so this is it. Now let's run it. And foreign key constraint fails. System customizer, I have an issue with that record. What did I call? Let's go over here. System customizer. Let's see the records. J is lowercase. Okay, so we'll just you know what, let's rerun the whole script. The reason why I did this because I had a capital J over here and there was a lower j over there, so I'm just gonna put both lowercase and I'll rerun the script. And it's a success. So apologize for that, that was my mistake. Okay, so now we're done with Visual Studio, MySQL Workbench. Head over to Visual Studio, and here you can set up the solution however you want it. However, the way I have it set up is I always divide my solution into different folders. So my view folder is going to contain all my my forms. My PD layer is going to contain all my classes that I'm going to need. The helper class is just a generic class that I'm going to use that will have all the methods that I can reuse throughout the application. The DA layer, it's the class it's the class that is going to interact with my database, and that's about it. So you can have it set up like this. It's a standard WPF program. The first thing you'll need to do is add a reference for the MySQL database connector. So right click on references, go to add references. You're going to go to browse, click on browse, and now you'll head over to wherever you installed MySQL Workbench. So usually the path is C program files x86 MySQL connector net 8.0. I have the 8.0 version. You might have it different. You will see that there are different connectors over there. So there's the Java for Java as well, there's for web as well. We're using with C#, so it's the net connector, assemblies, and then we want to click on mysql.data.dll. Add this. It's going to add it over here. Check it, and then click OK, and now the reference will be added over here. Alright, so now the first thing we'll do is make sure everything is connected. We can have our first connection to the database. So we can go ahead and create a class over here called DB helper. Alright, this is going to be a static class. It will have all our generic methods. Alright, and the first thing we'll need to do is add some class variables to it. Now I'm gonna zoom in on my screen so you guys can see it. So add in these connectors, these class variables, and then I have a generic method over here. Here's the generic method. Okay, I'm gonna have this solution upload a link to this solution, so if it's too hard for you guys to type at the same time, I will have a link. Just follow along with this tutorial. So what I have over here is a generic method called establish connection. The role of this method is simply to establish connection between my application and my database. So job is to establish connection to the database. Okay, so my server is I have it on my local machine, so it's the 127.0.0.1 localhost. User ID, it's root, and password is admin. Now when you're installing MySQL Workbench, it's going to ask you for a password. That password is used to connect to your local instance. That password, it's very important that you remember that password, because that's the password that I'm putting right here. Okay, that's the password that I'm putting right here, and along it's going to ask you for username as well. So when you're installing it, it'll ask you both username and password. So put them both over here. The name of my database is called sign in tutorial, as you can see right here, sign in tutorial. All right, and then the rest is just standard. So if everything is successful, we'll get a message like this: database connection successful. So now let's go over to our form. Let's click on view code, and we know that initialize component is the first method that gets executed. That is what loads our form. So we can call the method establish connection right away from here, and because it is in the DB helper class, we'll call it DB helper dot establish connection. Now sometimes this might give you a problem because you probably need to import it. So if I didn't have this using, I'm gonna get a little message saying I don't know what you're talking about, and then we can just click on this little light bulb and say, well, I'm talking about my helper class. So it's going to create a reference to that folder, and let's run it. So we can run this, and as you can see, our initialize component went through, and now we have a connection to our database. Click OK, and there you go, our form is loaded. So that'll be it for this part. Now in the second part, I'm going to show you how to connect from how to actually go about to entering your username and password and validating that against the database. So I'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much.